The Israelites were promised, when they came out of Egypt, see Deuteronomy 1-11, that they would increase by 1,000-fold. By 1,000-fold would they increase. In biblical times, when the census was taken, only males between the ages of 20 to 60 were counted. Therefore, in order to calculate it in our terms, we had to add to the number of those counted women folk and males between the ages of 60, between the ages of below 20 and over 60. And therefore we get to a number of, say, for 600,000 Israelites, you can say 300 people in modern terms. And that is what we previously worked on. But apparently there are sources. We have now found sources that indicate that sometimes in biblical prophecy, the total number is included. The total number, that is, when it says 1,000 times over, it means 1,000 times over, including the women, the children, the old folk, all in the one number. And that apparently is what happened in Deuteronomy 1-11. The total population was intended. This brings us down to present-day figures. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were the forefathers of the Israelite nation. Jacob was renamed Israel. Israel gave rise to 12 tribes. And so Rebekah, the wife of Isaac, is an ancestress of the Israelite nation, of the Israelite people, and she was blessed. And it said to bless her, to Rebekah, they said unto her, you are our sister, be you the mother of thousands of millions. Thousands of millions! In Hebrew, Alpha Yeravavah, and let your seed possess the gates of those who hate you. Whereas in Genesis, according to the ESV and almost all other translations, it says, and they blessed Rebekah and said to her, your sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s. Instead of thousands of millions, it says thousands of 10,000s. So that is a difference, a significant difference. And actually the Hebrew, the simple Hebrew, Alpha Yeravavah, which translated as tens of thousands of 10,000s, is more correct according to our understanding, but it does not necessarily mean so. There are sources saying something different, which we have articles on this. So the alternative thousands of millions is also feasible. Also, the Hatim Sofer, a great rabbi whom we have quoted in the past, he also understood to mean thousands of millions. And the Hatim Sofer was not using the King James Version. He was using other traditions. And also those who used the King James Version were not relying upon their own understanding. They used Jewish sources, which apparently have since been lost to us. So the mother of thousands of millions is a feasible alternative. And so too in Deuteronomy 1:11 we find the Almighty blessing Israel. 1:11 it says, may the Lord, the God of your fathers, increase you 1,000-fold, 1,000 times over more than you are, and bless you, just as he has promised you. Now this blessing apparently included blessing the people who were there, the 600,000, to increase them 1,000 times over. That is 600 million, making them 600 million. But the intention was 600 million, including the women and children, the total population. And we had an example of this being used in 1948 when the Jews were fighting against the Arabs to establish the state of Israel. At that time, the population of Israel was 600,000 Jews, and there were those who took this into consideration, considered it was portentous foretelling a great change for the good and the people of Israel, as indeed happened. And then the total number of Jews was 600,000 men, women, and children. So here we see that the blessing could be understood to mean the total population. And not only may it also mean the total population, it also could mean thousands of millions instead of thousands of 10,000s. Then we have another source. Moses blessed Israel. He said, may the Lord, the God of your fathers, increase you 1,000-fold more than you are and bless you as he has promised you. So here they are, promised to increase 1,000-fold. And so too, this 1,000-fold implies the total population. Previously, we had considered making allowance for the number of women and children to be added on to this number, and we've gotten to 3,000 million. But it doesn't have to be that way, and our sources indicate that it's not necessarily that way, and probably not that way. So therefore, we are back to the original number of 600,000 men, women, and children multiplied by 1,000, which means 600 million. You need a figure of 600 million. We're approximating to it. And here we have two sources indicating that that is the number that had been promised to them. We find that nations that we identify as Israelite, now their total population reaches that number of 600,000. Just to remind you, the Israelites had divided into two separate kingdoms, had the kingdom of Judah in the south, comprised of the tribes of Judah and Levi, and representing minorities of the other tribes. They were in the kingdom of Judah, also with Benjamin, Judah, Levi, and Benjamin. And then, whereas in the north you had the tribes of Asher, of Gad, of Naphtali, of Dan, of Benjamin, of Dan, of Joseph, of Zebulun, of Issachar, of Simeon, and Reuben. And from these nations, from these tribes came the foundational elements of entities in Western Europe. Asher became the Irish, Gad the Swedish, Naphtali the Norwegians, Dan the Danish. Joseph divided into two tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim became predominant amongst the English and other peoples in the British Isles, whereas Manasseh became predominant amongst the Americans. Also, Zebulun gave rise to the Dutch and other elements. It was prophesied that Zebulun would dwell on the shores of the sea, and the Dutch do dwell on the shores of the sea. 80% of the houses, or close to a large proportion of the houses, an overwhelming majority of the houses in the Netherlands have sea sand for their foundations. They're built on sand. They dwell on the shores of the sea, the only nation in the world about this which this could be said. There are numerous other proofs confirming the identity of people in the Netherlands with the Zebulun, but other tribes from Israel are also present. Also we had Issachar that we found amongst the Swiss and the Finns, and we had Simeon, who was scattered amongst the other tribes, especially in France and in Wales, also in Ireland, and we had Reuben, who helped give rise to the French. So they are the 10 tribes of Israel, the 10 separate tribes of Israel who had separated from the kingdom of Judah and set up their own kingdom. They were taken away by the Assyrians to places of exile. And in their places of exile, they migrated, they moved, they eventually converged in Western Europe, where their descendants are to be found today. That is whom the Bible is speaking about. And they are the ones of whom it was said that they would number thousands of millions. And who would be multiplied 1,000 times over. And where do we find this? We find this in population statistics. The world population, the world today is about 8,000 million people. 8,000 million people. More. Increasing every minute. 8,000 people, 8,000 million people in the world today. The USA has 347,000 people. United Kingdom, 69,000 people. Canada, 40,000. Australia, 26, close to 27. New Zealand, 5,000. The total for Joseph comes to around 489 plus 489,000. France has 66, close to 67 million. The Netherlands, 18 million. Belgium, 12 million. Sweden, 11 million. Israel, the state of Israel, 9,517,000. Switzerland, 9 million. Switzerland, close to 9 million. Denmark, 6 million. Finland, 5 million. Norway, also 5 million. Ireland, 5 million. Luxembourg, 680,000. Altogether, Israelite nations, excluding Joseph, are 149 million. Taking the nations identified with tribes other than Joseph, together with those from Joseph, we get a total of around 638 million. 638 million equals to 600,000 who would be blessed that they would increase 1,000-fold. And that is where we find the lost 10 tribes of Israel amongst those peoples. Now, it could be amongst many of these peoples you have foreigners, you have people not Israelites, a good portion of them in some areas. But this also balances out because you also have Israelites in other regions, other parts of Europe and other places who also descend from Israel. So in the end times when some will come in and some will go out, and when you work it out, it will balance itself out. So we can take 600 million as being the figure. And that is the figure they have reached. The fact that they have reached it in our time, in our day, indicates that we may be close to the end times. It is also a proof in its own right of the Israelite origin of these peoples we are speaking of.